I was actually like number 10 or something on the wait list, but one of the things I learned training for ordination at Tiratnaloka is how to get off a wait list. So yeah, I'm very grateful to be here. And I was here last weekend as well, actually. I was on a sub-30 retreat last weekend with a couple order members that I'd never met before, also sort of in their late 20s, early 30s. And what I was so taken by is that even though I hadn't really met them before, our training is so good that we were able to come together and bring a whole weekend into being and completely have a sense of shared vision on the basis of Bante's vision having been so effectively communicated to us. So that's also had me reflecting on my training. And of course, what comes to mind is the Transcendental Principle Retreat, which I was on just last year in your group, Vajratara. And I remember that a lot of people would really rave about this retreat, but my check-in on the first day was something like, I found the book boring and hard to read. But I think once I was in a little bit more refined mental states and I read the book again, it really, really hit home for me. I think the line that stood out in particular and that's really stayed with me is something like, if one is to truly understand the first noble truth, one must let one's gaze rest upon samsara, upon this endless cycle of rebirth, and not upon a single lifetime, which may sometimes be not very painful. And that really hit me because I do suffer, and I have suffered, and I will suffer, but a lot of the time I'm having a pretty good time. And when I read that, what I realized is that it's just not enough to fiddle around with this lifetime so that I can have a nice time and, have pulled a pretty good deck of cards for this lifetime. That just wasn't going to cut it. And I realized that even though in theory and in the abstract, I was really open to the idea of rebirth. I even have past life memories. I was still living my life according to a nihilist materialist idea, really, that I could just become a little bit more of a refined hedonist. So when I realized how serious this was, I showed up to my group the next day and I preached a bit of a sermon about the seriousness of the human predicament. And the main thing I remember is Naga Leela, she's ordained now. She leaned over and she looked at my notes and she said, "I like how your notes just say, yikes." So that was an important turning point for me, and it really ignited me taking my practice so much more seriously. It's kind of like this quote that Subhadramati shared with me, where Bhante said, sometimes lack of fear of death is just lack of imagination. I felt really, really afraid, and that helped me to gather more of my energy around wanting liberation, really. So fast forward about 6 months, by that point I'd received my letter and I was at Tiratnaloka for the last time, and I got to meet up with Karunadi, and we were in your bedroom, Karunadi, and I don't know if you remember, but I said, I'm here to get out of the endless rounds of rebirth. I hope that ordination will help. I was wondering if you could share any top tips with me. I think it was something like that. And Karunadi just saw right through it and she said, "Oh no, sweets. It's wisdom and compassion that will help free you from the rounds of rebirth, letting go of self-clinging, not aversion to these cycles." So that really planted a seed that maybe my strategy wasn't up to where it needed to be. So I ended up at Akashavana soon after that, feeling really motivated to get out of the endless rounds of rebirth and hoping the ordination would help. And one of the great things about Akashavana is that they have this amazing library and if you're like me and you were lucky enough to do the long retreat, you have loads of time to get into things. So I spent a lot of time in the library with my nose in various Dharma books, and some of the things that I read really struck me, really changed my approach to practice. So one of them is some sort of sutta. I can't remember. I think it's in the Pali Canon, but it's something about someone who frets about future lives. So who was I in lives gone by? What will I be in future times? The person who has those thoughts does not have insight. And that made me realize that the way I was approaching this wasn't really in line with reality. And then, I guess just to paint a bit of a picture, I spent a lot of that retreat sitting in my robes, my Crocs, and my bucket hat on a rock, fretting either about rebirth or whether I was going to survive the retreat without shaving my head. Those are my two main concerns. The other sutta that really struck me was a quote from the Prajnaparamita Sutta. And this one as well, I can't remember exactly, but it's something like, she who sees this world as a trap is not fit for full enlightenment. And I just thought, wow, that's me. This sort of aversion to the rounds of rebirth and fretting about who I will be in future lives and will I be reborn with that person? Because I really hope not. That was actually just reinforcing my self-clinging, this idea that there's a real me and a real world that I had to escape at all costs. And I think that one of the things that really shifted, and this was thanks to a seed planted by you, Vajratara, is after ordination, it's like the emotional quality around this had all changed. Instead of thinking all the time oh, this is such bad news about the rounds of rebirth, I would just think, isn't it good news? We found the Dharma, we're practicing seriously, and it's only a matter of time, really. It's only a matter of lifetimes, and we're in such good conditions. So the emotional quality of my experience changed a lot around that, and basically it was an experience of faith. So back in London, I know that I still need to be practicing this sort of new myth of my practice of just letting go of self-clinging moment by moment by moment at ever-deepening levels. For example, on the Sub-30 retreat last weekend, I had to teach the beginner's meditation at 7 a.m. And I had this moment where I was like, oh no, maybe it would be better for my spiritual life to do my sadhana at 7 a.m. But then I thought, well, if I teach the beginner's meditation, then the other order members can do their sadhana. And it's on that basis that I realized I could do it and I wanted to do it because I was less focused on optimizing for my practice and more on the sort of ecosystem of practice. But I know that this is something I need to keep deepening, because when Subhadramati asked me originally what I wanted to see for the order in 30 years' time, my first answer was, I hope I'm a stream entrant by then. So I know that there's still a large part of me that is mostly interested in ensuring my personal liberation. So I had to dig a little bit deeper, and I did find this hard to think about, and I think it's because I have so much confidence in how we're doing things already. I have so much confidence in the network of friendship. Even for people like me who started training for ordination after Bhante died, I have confidence in our training and the ability of our teachers to communicate a love of Bhante, a devotion to Bhante, and an understanding of Bhante's vision. So I think what I want to see is just more. I would love to see projects like Buddhafield Base Camp come into fruition, but also not only Tiratnaloka Unlimited, but what if there were unlimited spots on the Gower or unlimited spots on the Bhante course? I really love that there's training available to people after ordination, and I really hope to be partaking in all of that to deepen my own practice as well. And I guess the last thing is that, I was in a group yesterday and loads of people were ordained in the 80s, And I was like, wow, maybe one day I'll be in a group and I'll be in a group with people who are born after I was ordained. And maybe I'll even ordain someone who is born after I'm ordained. Maybe I'll just leave it there.